If you've ever browsed the subreddit IBO on Reddit, you'd be forgiven if you thought that the IB is nothing but hell and that it's a terrible, terrible thing that nobody should ever have to endure. Personally, I don't think that's true and I don't think that's fair or accurate. The IB changed me in 9 different ways, and it changed me not only as a student, but also as an individual. Here's how it changed me. Hey there, welcome back. My name is Emiliano. And I really like studying, learning, and becoming a better and more balanced person, which is one of the few things that the IB did to me. Now let's go on with the 9 things that the IB helped me become. But before I begin, let me tell you that this video is for people that haven't actually committed to doing the IB, or if you're on the fence, this is for you. If you're already doing the IB, you can check out this playlist up here where I talk about a lot of different IB stuff, from IAs to EEs, etc. Now, number 1 is time management. Now, pre-IB, I didn't really have to manage my time. Why? Because Mexican high school wasn't really challenging and I could just get away with doing things as early as possible. And I didn't really have to think about when I was gonna fit what, because we weren't really tasked with a lot of long-term projects or very time requirement heavy projects. The IB changed me because during the IB, you're gonna have a lot of long-term projects over the 2 years that won't have any external or extrinsic motivation or deadlines. I'm talking about CAS and the extended essay mostly, because nobody's gonna push you into doing CAS. So you have to more or less figure out how to do it yourself and how to schedule time yourself. And now, post-IB, I find it the easiest thing in the world to kind of look at a project, see more or less how much time it's gonna take and what I need, and then block it into my schedule so I can more or less, within the time frame that I have, finish it off. I'm no longer scrambling for time as I was during the first years of the IB, when I had no idea how to schedule my time. Now I'm much more organized and I know more or less how much each individual task, like writing 2,000 words or researching, is gonna take me, and that's invaluable. The second one is that I became much more critical. Pre-IB bruises my ego to say I wasn't very critical, and by this I mean that anything that I would read online or that my teachers would tell me or that I would kind of hear from somebody, I would take at face value, which isn't what you want to be doing, especially right now with all the misinformation and fake news and everything. But that wasn't very good of me. And how I changed is that I can identify 2 main areas or 2 main actors that made this change happen. There's a more shallow one and there's a more in-depth one. So the more shallow force, or the more shallow actor, so to speak, is TOK. Because it's very abstract, but it does teach you the basics and the fundamentals of questioning yourself and what you know and how you know it, etc. Check this out up here. But it's very abstract and it's very hard to apply to the real world and to real world situations. And this is where the second actor comes in, which was history class, or more specifically, I think it was my history teacher. Now, my history teacher, who, parenthesis, has a great podcast that I'll link in the description about education. He really forced us to question ourselves and question why we thought we knew what we knew. And he really showed us how to apply TOK to the real world and to actual real life situations. And now, post-IB, I'm much more comfortable being the one that is being critical of information or of sources, and especially when I get into arguments, it's surprising how destructive or how good of an argument it can be to just ask, okay, what's your source? Or okay, how do you know? And that can just be great. But right now I think it's really important to be critical of all the news that we receive online or we read online, etc. So the third one is curiosity. And I think that curiosity comes from learning. I think we start to learn something, and then when we realize how much we don't know, we become more curious to that which we don't know. And pre-IB, apart from going to school, I wasn't really learning a lot. Right now, during my gap year, I'm learning so much more, and therefore I'm more curious right now than I was back then. But it all started during TOK and the IB, because it turns out that by questioning yourself and by admitting to yourself that maybe you don't know as much as you think you know, cracks begin to appear in your knowledge and in your convictions. And the way that we fill in those cracks is by being curious and by exploring more and by learning more. So just TOK and questioning myself made me realize that I didn't know as much as I thought I did, and it made me more curious to learn more stuff. And right now I think curiosity is one of those things that we all need and we all should be. There's nothing wrong with being curious. I think on the other hand, I think we should all be very curious. There's this quote I really like by Bill Nye: I would just replace the bored with curious, because there's so much that we still don't know or haven't discovered or can't understand yet, not only as a species, but also as people. And just craving to know more and being curious is, I think, great. Number 4 is research, because pre-IB me had never been asked to write an IA or an extended essay or anything over 1,000 words or 2 pages. It was sufficient to research questions like textual questions or just a few keywords, and if it didn't work, then I would jump onto the next link and the next link until I found what I was looking for, or I would rephrase it in Spanish and then in English and then translate it in my head or something. But then comes the IB, and you're asked to write 4,000 words for an extended essay where you're terrified that if you misquote or you don't quote something by accident, you will fail because of plagiarism. So you learn to be much more careful and much more attentive to what you're doing. And I learned how to look through books, PDFs, videos, PowerPoint presentations, articles. I learned to look through it all to find what I was looking for, and I learned a lot on how to research and how to become a better researcher. And now post-IB, it's the most natural thing in the world to me to just look through 4 or 5 different sources when I'm trying to understand something. I think I actually only do one search or search for one thing once when I'm looking for 2 things. Something I kind of already know that I'm trying to corroborate, like a quick fact, or a figure, so to speak. So a date, the population of a certain place, the weather in somewhere else, time zone differences, etc. For everything else, it's really natural for me to just go through a bunch of sources that are all different to reach the most accurate information I can within the time that I'm giving myself. The 5th one is independence, because the way that the high school system works here in Mexico, at least in my school, everything is really short-term goals, and honestly, it works, but it doesn't work in the same way as the IB does, because during the IB, everything is up to you. Since there is no grades given apart from IAs, EEs, predicteds, and end of IB2 exams, all your motivation for notes, for homework, for studying is intrinsic. Nobody's gonna chase you around asking you to do your extended essay. You have 2 years to do it yourself, and if you think you can manage to pull it off in the last 2 months, nobody's gonna tell you otherwise, or nobody's gonna force you to do it otherwise, and you're just gonna have to suffer the consequences. Same with CAS. So that was a real change, and it was really scary at first because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing and nobody's telling me, and I'm just supposed to know for myself. But as the IB progressed, I became more and more independent. And now post-IB, it actually took me a while to know whether or not I had actually acquired this skill, because I hadn't studied for a bit. But I proved that I had when I tackled the whole AP Chemistry Khan Academy curriculum for my medical admissions test, because that was all intrinsic and I didn't want to do it because I don't like chemistry a lot, but it was fine and I could do it, and that proved to me that I had become more independent and more independent learner, at least when compared to my pre-IB years. Number 6, and the one that I think I'm very grateful for, is public speaking. Because pre-IB, whenever I had to speak in public, I was the epitome of stage fright. I was sweaty, I was shaky, I was nervous, I was anxious. It was terrible. It was terrible. And the only 2 reasons I wasn't nervous was because A, I didn't give a crap about what I was presenting, which isn't good when you're presenting for school, or B, because I knew to the T everything I was gonna say, which is like reading off flashcards, but with the extra step of memorization in between. So not public speaking, not cool. And I can think during the IB of 4 instances where I slowly leveled up in this skill. The day I realized I had gone from level 0 to level 5 was the day of my individual oral English presentation, because I was asked to present for 10 minutes, talk for 10 minutes straight into the camera to my teachers and to my classmates, which was only like 5 or 6 people, but it was still really nerve-wracking. So what I did, which is I think really ingenious, and I urge you to try if you can, I staged it as an interview where I had pre-recorded the questions that I would play to myself, and I would question myself, and then I would answer the question. So I had prepared obviously the answers, and that way I had the prompts of the question, so I could more or less talk about what the question was saying, and I wouldn't lose track of what I was saying and just go into a different weird path. Like it happens, you ramble, I rambled, but this helped me stay more or less on track and keep my cool. Level 5 to level 15 was the first Model United Nations conference in Turkey. Because I had never done MUN, I had no idea what I was doing. I was in a classroom without any of my classmates that had come from my school. And here I had this flash of insight. If I'm in an argument or in a debate, no matter how serious or not serious it is, I can barely keep my mouth shut. And not being able to shut up during a debate, even if it is a debate in front of 30 or 40 people that were in the classroom that day, was great. And I realized that if I could engineer my presentations in the future to be more or less like debates where I'm talking with the audience, I could pull off public speaking. Unfortunately, I didn't get the chance to do that, and the day I leveled up from level 15 up to level 30 was when we had to present our CAS project to an actual real life bank. Now this is when I realized that I was more or less getting over it, because we were presenting to a half empty or half full auditorium, and there was the bank people in the first row, and it was all adult serious bank stuff, and it was 3 classmates and myself, and I was nervous, I was shaky, but walking around and not really looking at the people, looking at my friends in the seats behind them instead, was how I was able to more or less camouflage and eventually just forget my nerves. But that's when I realized that I was actually getting better at this. And then the last time I gave a speech in public was actually terrifying, but it was actually really gratifying too, because it was the day I leveled up all the way up to level 50, and I realized that I have more or less gotten over my fear of public speaking. And the way this happened was that I was coerced/forced by my MUN delegation, so my classmates, to go up to the microphone in front of around 500 or more people and ask a question to the delegation that was talking to us. And I had no idea what I was gonna ask. I was kind of dozing off, and the next thing I know, I'm up there and there's 3 people in front of me, and then 2, and then 1, and then it's me. I don't remember my question. I was quite nervous, but when I came back, everybody told me I was fine. And I looked at videos, and I am actually fine, and I look quite confident, and that to me was a win. I was quite nervous, but the fact that I was able to do what I wanted to do and not actually show that how nervous I am was really rewarding, and I'm quite glad that happened, but I wouldn't have chosen to put myself out there like that. So now, post-IB, I'm really much more able to just laugh at myself and tell myself, as Daniel Kahneman said, that nothing in life is as important as it seems in the moment. So we tend to look at our present moment in a very over-exaggerated way, when really in 2 years, 5 years, 3 months, 5 months, it won't really matter. And now I'm conscious of that, and plus my practice, plus the fact that I'm a bit more self-confident, etc. It all helps. And honestly, I think the best cure for public speaking is terrifyingly practice. Like most things in life, if you practice, you'll get good at it. So number 7 is essay skills, because as I mentioned before, back in high school here in Mexico, I wasn't asked to write anything over 1,000 words or 2 pages, so it was quite easy, even in Spanish. And then in English, it was even easier because the teacher had to adapt to different levels of English because of different students. So it was quite easy for me personally. But then comes the IB. And in the IB, I was taking 2, I think, of the most essay writing skills intense subjects that there are, which is history, higher level, and English A, literature, higher level. I learned 2 different things from these 2 subjects. And now these 2 subjects came with a very, very steep learning curve that was honestly really frustrating to me, because I was used to being quite good at school, and then I'm thrust upon, especially English, and I was not very good at all. And I was a terrible student for the first 2 or 3 months, and then I got better both at writing because of my teacher, but also at the actual class because I was enjoying it, because I was doing better at it. So with that disclaimer, English taught me very basic things that I didn't know, or that I just hadn't really put into practice in a long time, or at the level sufficient to succeed in English in the IB. Things like commas, sentence structure, paragraph structure, punctuation, vocabulary, grammar. Formal writing was very, very tough for me. Formal writing and grammar were terrible for me. I was so bad at them. And then from history, I learned how to actually structure whole essays and whole paragraphs. We were told to use this thing called the Apec Model. It stands for assertion, proof, explanation, conclusion. And I think I was quite good at it because most of my classmates had been writing essays before in English, and they had good habits, but they also had bad habits that they had to unlearn. But I was a very, very clean, shiny, spotless slate. So I had no bad habits to unlearn. At the same time, I didn't have any good ones. But it was very easy for me to see this as a very logical way, and it was quite easy for me to do this on a regular basis on most or all of my essays. Now post IB, I think a lot of things have changed. I've probably written more during my gap year than I did during the 2 years of the IB. That's what daily journaling and just writing consistently does, which is something I quite enjoy now. So I don't flinch at a word count anymore. It's mostly finding the right words to put down on a page that are more worrisome. And then I think I've also learned how to write a pretty compelling essay. And without bragging, I'm just gonna direct you to this video over here. Let's move on to the next one. Number 8 is resilience. I think that pre-IB, I was as resilient as I needed to be, which given the amount of work we were given now retrospectively, was not very resilient at all. I did get stressed, of course, but we weren't doing anything very, very stressful. And so being a bit resilient was enough to meet my resilience requirement and not crumble under the pressure of Mexican high school. Now to the IB, where you're gonna have a much wider and bigger and more intense and more expansive and almost infinite workload, you have two options if you don't wanna crumble during the IB. If you don't want to crumble, you either enter the IB being resilient or you become resilient throughout the IB. Now, I did not enter the IB being resilient. I became resilient because I remember the first year being so challenging and me being very stressed and very on edge all the time because I didn't feel like I was doing enough, and it got better and I can now deal and manage my stress much better than I could before. And honestly, apart from managing it better, I get less stress. It's easier for me to prioritize and to know what matters and what doesn't matter, and really to focus and to choose what I expend energy on and what I don't. And that's great, and I'm really thankful that the IB gave me that. And last but definitely not least is perfectionism. I think that before the IB, I was able to get away with being a perfectionist, but my average was always above 90%. So it was very easy for me to just try my best and then just perfect on it because I wasn't falling behind on anything else. During the IB, you won't have time to be a perfectionist. Why? Because if you try to perfect one thing, that means you're ignoring the other 50 things that you have to do. And if you're ignoring the other 50 things you have to do, you're gonna start falling behind. You have to say, okay, I did my best, but it's not perfect, and that's fine. So now, post-IB, I'm much more okay with not being perfect. That doesn't mean I don't try my best. I try my best, but I'm okay with my best not being perfect, and that's fine. I know that as long as I'm doing my best, and I'm achieving what I think I can achieve, what I'm hoping to achieve, that's fine for me. It doesn't have to always be the best. As long as it's my best and I'm satisfied with the result, without it being perfect, I'm happy. So thank you guys for watching, commenting, liking, subscribing this video. I know it was longer, but I think if somebody's on the fence about doing the IB or not, this is the video for them. So make sure to share it with your friends, and I'll catch you guys next week. Cheers.